Good evening, everybody. And my name is Bishop Douglas Crosby. I'm the Bishop of Hamilton and the co-treasurer of the Canadian Conference of Catholic Bishops. And I'm here at the plenary assembly of the Canadian Conference of Catholic Bishops in Saint-Adèle, Quebec. So this is a little opportunity to tell you about day 2 of the conference. And I have basically 5 points I want to make as we go through this. The first speaker today, first of all, just to say about the day, it's been deeply emotional and very informative. The principal speaker this morning was Cardinal Oscar Rodriguez Maradiaga, who is the Archbishop of Tegucigalpa in Honduras, and he's the president of Caritas Internationalis. Now, that's a Vatican organization that draws together 164 organizations from about 200 countries in the world, and it serves 200 countries in the world, and it's a remarkable organization. And when he began his talk this morning, the first thing he did was acknowledge the contribution that missionaries from Canada have made in Honduras, in Latin America, but particularly in Honduras. And he mentioned in particular Bishop Vernon Fougere, who was the Bishop Emeritus, a Bishop of Charlottetown, and who died earlier this year. Bishop Fougere served for some years in Tegucigalpa in the diocese and founded a parish there, which the Cardinal says is thriving still. So he wanted to acknowledge his good work, and I was touched by his sensitivity. The talk was really about the work of Caritas Internationalis and the foundation of the work. And he spoke particularly of 3 documents from Pope Benedict XVI. The first was Deus Caritas Est, Pope Benedict's first encyclical, and later encyclical that flowed from that, Caritas in Veritate. And these documents spoke, and he pointed out that these documents spoke very much of the commitment of the Church, the fundamental commitment of the Church to charity, not only as a kind of a sideline of the work of the Church, but this is the heart of the Church. This is the Church. The Church is charity. And then he spoke about the what is called a motu proprio, which would be a particular letter of the Pope, which usually establishes some rules for operation, and it's called Intima Ecclesia Natura, and it presented a legal framework for the Church's charitable work. So with those 3 documents, he really encouraged the dioceses and the Church nationally and the Canadian Conference to continue the good work that we are doing. Our contribution or our commitment to Caritas Internationalis is done through the Canadian organization of the Canadian Catholic Organization of Development and Peace, and so he was very supportive and very grateful for the work of development and peace around the world, and many of the projects that are benefiting the poor in many countries around the world. And he mentioned in particular Western Africa, where the poor are fed and communication systems are being established, and many good projects like that. So the second, following the Cardinal's presentation, we heard from Michel Roy. Mr. Michel Roy is a layman from France who is the General Secretary of the Caritas Internationalis, and he spoke basically about the structure of the organization and its basic, how would you say, its basic intention to serve and to accompany and to defend the poor. So those are kind of 3 basic attitudes that this organization uses or teaches in its efforts to serve the poor. He mentioned that in Spain there are over 62,000 volunteers who assist the good work that is being done for the poor in that country. In the afternoon, we had Cardinal Rodriguez. We had a closed session, so it meant the bishops were alone with Cardinal Rodriguez. He is also chair of the what he called the C8, the group of 8 cardinals that have been invited by Pope Francis to lead a study moving toward a reform of the Curia. And their first meeting will be in October the 3rd, a 3-day meeting. And he gave us some insight into the work, the direction that this reform would be taking. And it was, I would say, it was not only was it very interesting, I found it personally a very moving and a very encouraging presentation. And the fourth point I want to make is that later in the afternoon, we had the 3 members of our 4-member commission for justice and peace speak to us on a document called Pacem in Terris, which was the encyclical of Pope John the 23rd in 1963, published just a month or 2 before he died. He was suffering from cancer at the time, but it was so. This year is the 50th anniversary of that document, and the members of the commission presented various facets of the document. I think one of the most impressive parts of the presentation was Archbishop Mancini, the Archbishop of Halifax and Yarmouth, who spoke about his own personal experience being a student in Kitchener at the time at St. Jerome's College, and the fear that existed in the world because it was the time of the Cold War, the Cuban Missile Crisis, the fear of the bomb, the fear of annihilation, and wondering even if the next day would we be around and or would we be able to communicate. And the students lined up and phoning home and talking to their parents, him talking to his father, wondering whether this would be the last time. And in the midst of this, a letter from the Holy Father, from a letter of hope and encouragement, calling people to recognize that the human person is good. There's a lot of goodness in the world, and that this goodness had to work together. We had to work together to build peace in our world. And the fact that the letter was written to all people of goodwill. It wasn't just written to Catholics. It was written to everybody to pay attention and to work together for the cause of peace. Tonight we're going to be enjoying a meal, a celebratory meal with Cardinal Rodriguez Maradiaga. It's a wonderful gift to the country that he has visited and to the bishops, and he is an encouraging man and has been an inspiration for us today. So thank you very much, and I'm open to questions if there are any.
Bishop Crosby, thank you very much. I know you can't tell us much about what happened in the closed room session with Cardinal Maradiaga, but I'm wondering if you could describe the mood and the spirit among you and your fellow bishops as this meeting was going on. What was the atmosphere like inside?
Okay, no, I can't talk much about what he said, but the atmosphere was, as I said, emotional. I was emotional about it because it was so hopeful. First of all, he's an inspiring man, and he was very frank with us. He spoke openly and freely and honestly, and he's a man who has a lot of great experience and wisdom because he comes from a tough situation. So we knew we were listening to somebody who is close to the Holy Father. and who knows the situation. He's not speaking from say, from opinion. He's speaking from knowledge. So we listened carefully, and then he listened to us. The floor was open, and we were able to express our own hopes and our own concerns and our own dreams for the future, for possible directions. And he listened intently, and I would say was encouraging. And the whole conversation was encouraging and hopeful and moving.
It sounds like it was an exciting experience. Is there a sense of excitement in the church? I mean, the Canadian church, but the Universal Church as well, based on these deliberations? Well,
I would say that certainly there was a lot of excitement coming out of that meeting. When we met for coffee after the discussion, I think we all knew that we had experienced something special, and perhaps even something historic. So it's, he mentioned that whatever happens will not happen in 3 days in October. It's going to be a long-term process, and it will be, if I can use the expression, a work in progress. But the Pope is courageous, and the Pope is good. So I look forward to seeing what will happen.
Bishop, thank you very much. You mentioned this morning's conversation about the role of the bishop in justice, peace, and caritas.
Yes.
And then this afternoon about Pacem in Terris. What do you see, based on today's discussion, as the role fundamentally of the bishop, the diocesan bishop, in bringing about justice, peace, and charity in their local church?
One of the things that was mentioned in the discussion this morning, and I don't remember which speaker, it might have been the Cardinal, but it might have also been Mr. Ottawa, is that we can't only work with programs, but we must work with individuals. There are people, real people, who are suffering and who are in difficulty, and we must work with them personally. So many times you walk by people who are on the street and begging, and you might take a loonie or a toonie and pop it in and not even look at the person. And they were saying how important it is, to look at the person and to know that you're dealing with Christ, if you want to, you're dealing with a child of God. You're dealing with a brother or a sister. So somehow, as bishop, I think we have to do that. In the Diocese of Hamilton, one of my roles is, and I take it seriously, is to point out all the good that's going on in the diocese. Look at the good here, St. Vincent de Paul. Look at the good at the hospital. Look at the good with the young people in the schools. There's a lot of good work being done in the diocese, and I would dare say throughout the country.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you very much.